Well, we got the dingers filled, we knocked it down, and now we gotta get to 320. It'll get reprimed, but we're gonna flip it over and strip the other side.
Some of that foam's still in there that the factory put in there, but I think I'm gonna tape this all off and then pack seam sealer in all these. All right, we've got it masked off. Gonna go for some neatness here.
So in the process of sealing up the two halves of the hood, we got the lower depressions all taped off and everything, and when we get this seam sealer, you can show them the can. It's some pretty good stuff. I mean, that stuff is sticky. I can't work with gloves, so I had it. He was putting the putty in there, and I was taking my finger and dragging it and pushing it in, so it was like pressing it in. And then I had to peel the tape off, and then as you're taking that off, that's got it on there. I had more and more on my hands. I had rags wiping it off. And you got to work fast with this because it's drying as quick as you're putting it on. And some of the stuff bled through, but we'll deal with that later after it's totally dry. We could sand it off.
Yeah, I think it came out pretty nice. I mean, it's a nice, tight, clean appearance. I've sanded out around the tops of all the edges of the seam sealer to give it a crisp look. And this has all been blocked down to 320. I'm gonna shoot another coat of epoxy on it. So it's drying now. It looks better in the dent department, but I'm thinking 300 is a little too coarse for final paint. So I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna go with high build and then knock it down to 400 before we paint it. Just trying to get everything that needs to be painted prepped.
You're telling me you're not going to run a front license plate?
No, I'm gonna have the stripe. It's gonna be on the hood, and I'm gonna have it continue on down underneath the car. So this piece I had to get off the internet. It does have a little bit of damage on it.
Right there.
A little bit here too.
This has a corner. This has a damaged. This has a damaged hole. A little bit there.
So we're gonna take all the metal off these pieces, start working on them. Here, let's see if we can get it off without breaking it.
So that's all that's happening is this goes in here and this spring clip is prying this in, you know, that's what holds it in. These spring tabs. When people are doing body work and they're just trying to hammer out something really quick, there's sometimes that going fast, it leaves a lot to be desired. So the guy went through the problem of gluing this all back together with some kind of schmutz, but he never even sanded. How much time would that have taken to just smear a little Bondo in here and go, would have been done. This is probably on the car, and the guy would have had to been on his back, you know, and be working on it like that. You're breathing in a bunch of dust, and they figured you won't see it when it's down that low. So this is a situation where these are put in at the factory. They got to cut up, you know, self-tapping thread, but as we were taking out the nuts, there's a little bit of rust on the thread, so the whole thing pulled out. I'm just putting some of this on here. And all it's gonna do is, we still got threads here, but it'll join that, thread and keep it from unscrewing if they ever had to take it out again. You know, if it's all stripped out, then you'd have to use some kind of you know, like JB Weld or...
It's gotta go more.
You just don't want it to unscrew next time. So first off, I just cleaned it up. Looks like it's hot off the press now. And you could tell it wasn't done very good. So I'm gonna get rid of all that old crap. Then we're gonna have to put that in there first, let that harden, and then start fixing up, you know, the outside. But you gotta gouge everything out So it's lower, so when you do body work, it's still held together. Whenever you're doing some fiberglass, if you just patch over the top of it, you're still working with something weak. So when you look at this, you're gonna go, oh, is that horrendous? What the heck did he do? But you gotta grind out all the bad parts and then roughen it up so that cloth and fiberglass has something to grab to. And then when you're putting the glass in there and you're putting the resin in there, you got to make like a backing. That's why I just put some tape on it, because, you know, it'd just be falling all over the place. We're going to have to attack this probably at 2 different attempts. You know, first just getting this layer in, and then you have to reconstruct the scene of the crime. And we had taken the lenses out before, and you'll see where this and this side's missing too. As this comes together, this little thing was busted there. This has been busted. So we figure there's supposed to be a 90-degree lip all the way around here so that when the lenses fit in, you don't have a big air gap. So on this, we'll have to lay this one in first, and then later we'll make a little strip, like you're welding 2 pieces of metal together to make a curve. And that'll be our second attempt. Right now we're just going to be putting that cloth in there and getting something started.
I'd be doing this, but I'm filming.
Okay, I'll just leave that alone.
What about this
Oh
one?
yeah, up here. So a lot of times you can't get the air bubble out, you know, so you got to keep stabbing at it to try to get it to mesh.
That looks pretty good.
Like I said, we're gonna have to attack this at 2 different planes because there's a 90. That was a little small.
You want to pack another piece on top of it?
Right in this corner, I think. And then what you don't want, you just take a cutoff wheel and you just chop it and use your die grinder and reshape it, and then you do another coat. But we're gonna have to dam this up.
Yeah.
And
that's gonna be multiple coats.
so, like, all this stuff that's getting someplace else and there's no cloth, that is no strength whatsoever. I mean, you could glob this on all day long and all it would do is just shatter. You gotta have the cloth, and it's gotta be together, and then it's strong. Anything less, it would just shatter like glass.
All right, so I just took the spring off here. You can see how loose this hinge is. This all needs to be tightened up. I'm gonna clean it up first, though.
Yeah, if you don't do this right, it can be dangerous, you know, if it got away on you and hit you in the face.
Yeah, I don't know if this is the right method, but this is what I'm doing.
I thought you were gonna pry it. Well, that didn't look bad.
If you got some guns.
Just getting all the grit out between the joints after sandblasting. So when you got slop this bad, it's hard to adjust the gaps on your fender to the hood, you know, if you can move around this much. And when you got these hoods on cars from the 73 on up, they're so huge. I mean, you're lifting up this hood and, you know, it's going all over the place. If we get this tightened up, it'll just go up and down and not wobble.
Got the technique down now. So we're gonna heat the front a little bit, flip it over, heat the back of the rivet, flip it back over, heat the front, and then we're using a center punch on the front side.
Spreading it out. We gotta creep up on it because now it's really tight. But with oil and stuff, she'll break in.
We heat the front side up a little. Back to the back. Front. Try it.
Oh, she's tight. Oh yeah, she's tighter now. You ain't gonna do it cold. We had to heat these up cherry red, and now it's tight enough. You know, it's gonna break in. But there's no wiggling whatsoever.
I'm knocking all the black off of the hood here. I figured I'd talk about this stripe a little bit more. So clearly it had a white stripe. This was under the chrome. And it, again, this looks like it was painted on. It does not look like a decal to me. Each of the side stripes look like about a 1/4 inch thick, maybe slightly bigger. The space is about a 1/4, and then the big stripe is about 6. Seems to measure the same front and back.
He knows that I don't like white stripes. I always thought white stripes were for girls and black stripes were for guys.
Depends how you identify that day.
Some guys say the way you mix it, you introduce bubbles. You know, over mixing it. And I'm colorblind, so I can't tell when it turns a neutral color between the hardener and the product that I'm using right here, this tiger here. Finely chopped up fiberglass strands, and you know, it's like Bondo.
This is short strand. We got some long strand too, but it didn't really seem appropriate for this.
The longer the strand, the harder it is to work on. I tried fixing this with the cloth, and I just kept getting a bubble. I keep messing with it. But I hate, because you can't get in here to sand it.
How many coats of that glass do we put on there? 3 or 2? 2, I think.
Well, each time I do it, I hack half of it off.
Right.
So it's like starting over each time.
But some of these, like this, has gotten really built up well. So we can finish that with just regular Bondo.
Yeah.
We're gonna finish knocking this hood down now. So this hood's cleaned up. I think we're just gonna go after this one big dent. We'd probably do more damage trying to get these little guys out than it's even worth. So we're gonna try to use the stud gun. What do you think did that? It looks like a ball peen hammer hit that.
Somebody was mad. The car didn't want to run. But I think we put the stud gun on, you got it held up, I'll tap around the outside.
Right there is the deepest part.
Okay.
Perfect.
Easy. Wait.
What's happening?
It's coming up. I saw Chip Foose and he just used this.
I'm just holding this in my hands here. Ready?
it's shallow. So some guys might think you're getting too fastidious about getting every little ripple out of it. But I've got friends that have cars that are black, and even after the body work is done, a black car sucks up so much heat. When they're at a car show on a hot sunny day, that black car is just sitting there sucking up the heat. And where quarter panels are put on, or wherever there's some body, you know, the roof line going into the A-pillar and stuff, and there's shrinkage, I got friends of mine that'll see that there's a little depression, and they take it back to the body shop and they get that all fixed up because they want it perfect. I'm just not that fastidious. There was little dingers, you know, and this is just dragged as tight as you can, and we'll level that off, and then we're gonna skim coat the whole thing real tight with honey, so it's real thin Bondo. Now, in the process of this being stamped out, when you're sanding it, it's like this is a high point here, and all the way around it, there's like a depression right here. So from about here to here, if you wanted this thing perfect, this has to be all blocked out with thin layer, and then there's the high build primer, and you just sand it until you're just starting to break through and stop, so that it looks like laser straight when you're finished.
We got all the black paint knocked off these, starting with some Bondo.
So after doing all these little miscellaneous tests, this is going to be a long one. We're going to attack this at different places, and he watches videos where this guy uses this to spread the honey real thin. It's real easy to spread it. And we're going to go put a thin layer over everything and block that out. And then when you put the high build primer on it, that's like a liquid Bondo itself. Then as you're sanding it, you're just breaking through the sheet metal. Then, and we use a guide coat. Then we'll make sure that we got the thing straight. Because this is a big piece of real estate. When you're looking at it, you're gonna see any kind of wave.
All right, all this stuff does is, oop, that's way too much. Makes it spread a little bit easier. Let's see how this.
I'm gonna save that out of another sheet.
Let me get rid of some of this. This is a major freaking load right here.
And you can see how easy it flows now.
Right, and this is supposed to be just for the final coat of filler. Man, that's a wet coat there. That first batch we did was really loose.
I liked it though. So you can see how this has just been skim coated over the whole thing. And now I'm gonna start off just knocking the ridges down, just like I did over here with the 80 grit. And then it'll be delicate hand sanding with a board and trying to get this thing as flat as we can. And we'll use guide coat as soon as I get that knocked down. And you can see through it almost. So it's not going to be a big Bondo bucket, but we just want it straight. We got this is long enough. And that way you don't get a wave going. This knocks it down. You can see where the high points are just starting to pop out. So you got to work it this way. These parts right in here are perfect. There's no dingers in them. So I can take it right down to the steel and then feather it into the Bondo. And we aren't going to have any kind of wave in these. These are real strong creases in the metal. Okay, when you look at a hood and stamped out of sheet metal and it looks as straight as heck, it's not. So we smeared Bondo paper thin with that honey so it was real runny and spread it, you know, as tight as you could spread it. Knocked it down with 60 just to get rid of the ridges, and then finished with 80 until you see the high spots starting to spring through, and you feather that in. I mean, this stuff is like sheet of paper thick, but if you want to get your car as straight as possible, that's what we're trying to go for. And then once we put the primer on, then you'll see everything being visible. That's going to be the sealer. And then you put the high build primer on. That's another little layer. And you block that out. And then maybe another coat after that. All right, this is what you have after it's been sealed with the sealer primer. It's black. And you'll see all the 80 grit scratches, but we didn't care because we're going over it with high build primer. But when it's black like this and it's wet, then you can still see some imperfections that we hope will be straightened out after the filler primer. But there's always a fly in the ointment when we go to paint. And before we took off painting, ran lacquer thinner through it, checking the pattern, everything was fine. And also when we put this primer in there, we were checking all the different pressures and changing the needles and stuff. And all he was getting was a pattern like 4 inches. Normally you should be spraying with about a 6-inch pattern, and it spreads out on the outer edges and you overlap. Well, this was just really slow, doing it like a spray bomb. Well, it hasn't flashed off yet, you know, it's still drying. And it's just one more step, you know, just, these are all the pieces. And wherever Bondo is, this sealer primer sucks into it, and it actually accentuates it at first until it's totally dry. After this, when we get these pieces all done, then we can start putting the car all together and setting the gaps.